Hello everybody. Hope your project 2 is coming along swiftly. In this video, I'm just going to talk about how we can start exporting our connectors to STL files for 3D printing. Going to be pretty quick, pretty painless, but once you get it all made, then you can go from here. So the first thing I need to do is I actually need to turn this into a mesh, and that's because a lot of slicing software programs need STL files or OBJ files. They require objects that are already formatted as a mesh, which we've gone over as just essentially a series of vertices, points that connect to create an object. And we'll see that in a little bit of detail. You can see over here on my layers is that I've got my connectors. I've already meshed some of my connectors. I've got this last one to go, but I've moved all the meshes to this layer, and that's just going to be helpful just for organizing, just so you can quickly grab some of those. And you can see down there, there's one of my meshed objects. So without further ado, I'm going to select the object I would like to export for 3D printing, and I'm just going to type in mesh. I'm going to hit enter, and this is going to pop up. If your polygon mesh options doesn't pop up in Mac, there's a little drop-down menu. Just make sure you click that arrow. I'm going to go back to its original settings, which is 0.0 for maximum angle. And that's the one setting that I really want to show you, because when it comes to curved sections, and in our connectors, we're going to have a lot of curves happening in this, right? If you don't define a maximum angle, it kind of leaves it up to whatever the algorithm tries to decide, or its sort of predisposed settings. And we want to change that setting because a curve is going to be simplified into a lot of different straight sections. And if you don't define a maximum angle, it will, it can make a very jagged curve, because a curve is essentially defined by rotation or angles. So I'm just going to hit preview to show you what we get, and you can see here, you see this edge, it's a little jagged, like this is a nice gentle curve, but then it kind of gets cut off with this straight component right here and again here. And that can be a real issue if you've got some like real subtle curves, to just give something a like gentle bevel or fillet. So we're going to change that, and we're just going to change it to a maximum angle of 3, which is 3 degrees. And we're going to leave all these other things. I'm going to hit preview. And it's going to probably take a little second to think, and there we go. This is our new one, and you can see just how that has changed, because it's saying like, okay, from this vertice point here, it can only move 3 degrees, which is a lot closer to what we're looking for. And if you look at big flat sections, we can see that that's actually a very low mesh count in these flat areas, whereas the curved sections have a high mesh count because of that degree. And you can see actually here, it's a pretty good example. I know it's hard to see with a whole lot of information, but we're looking at this edge right down here, and you can see how it starts off with a lot of little spaces and then moves out to bigger meshes. And that's kind of what we're looking for right there. So if your meshes aren't really nice and clean, change the maximum angle first. You can increase the polygon count, but at some point, this is really going to make a bigger difference than that density. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to select my mesh. I'm going to move it back into my mesh layers. I'm going to hide that one connector, which is connector 1. And now for exporting, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to select that mesh, just come up over to File, Export Selected. You want to make sure to do Export Selected. If you just do Export, it's going to export the whole file. And we're just going to export these individually. And the reason we're doing individually is because we will, it's going to be easier to set them up. If you try to export them all at once, it's going to export a cloud of connectors that you won't be able to orient in your Cura software or Slicer software. So I'm going to change my file type to STL. I'm going to change the name to project 2, add connector 1, I believe what it is, and then I'm just going to hit export. And because it's already a mesh, you don't have to mesh the object already. Sometimes if you just select your poly surface or your solid object and you export it as an STL, it's going to say, okay, you need to mesh it first. And it's going to go through that first dialog box that I showed you. And I like to do that beforehand so I can actually see what the output is. We're going to go with binary file type. You don't really do ASC2. Export open objects. That's fine. So we're going to hit export. And then what we can do, I'm going to minimize this window and go to my Cura software. And I've just got my Ultimaker 3 settings up. So I'm going to come to File, Import, come on, where are you? Or Open File. I'm going to find that connector 1. Great, connector 1. I'm going to open. Now, we were working in inches, and most files require millimeters. Most STL 3D printing files require millimeters. And that's what it's going to export your file in. So even though you have it in inches, it's not going to naturally convert to millimeters. And this is it. So this was originally something like, let's see here. It was analyze distance. So 2 inches. And in here, it's reading it as 2 millimeters. So we need to scale this up. So we're going to select this object, and we're going to come over to our scale option. And we can see it's roughly 2 millimeters. But we need to increase that. And we're just going to do it by percentage. And 1 inch equals 2.54 millimeters. So what we can do here is multiply 100 by 25, sorry, 1 inch equals 25.4 millimeters, not 2.54, 25.4 millimeters. So 100 times 25.4, so we're doing 254,000%. And that should get us back to our 2 inches, which we can double check if you want to, but you know, that's generally the rule of thumb. You can do 51.42. Because it's rotated, it's not going to be exact, but you can do the math, and 51.4 is roughly 25-ish, or it's roughly 2 inches, sorry. So remember to do that, make sure you just scale your objects up if you know your file was originally in inches, okay? So then I'm just going to go through this whole process and set this back up as if I were normally going to print. Oh, come on, computer, you can do this. Here we go. I'm just trying to get it to lay flat on that bottom surface there. And I don't know if it did that, or if it's thinking. I'll just select face to align with build plate. And it's, well, hopefully it's not rotating it. Hopefully it'll just bring it down. But one other thing that I want to think about when working with this is my infill. Right now it's at 20%, so we'll take a look at it. And there we go, perfect, cool. I got my infill at 20%, 70% for overhang, brim, great. I'm going to bring this back up and slice. And because our connector is kind of small, I just want to make sure that I have enough infill in here to retain rigidity. If this was just like a smaller connector or didn't have any of these flanges here to help support it. If I were to use a very minimal amount of support structure, this wouldn't be as strong. So once it's done slicing, I can look at the preview. Okay, so we've got this back, which is great. And I'm just gonna look down and make sure, oh, I wanna play it, I want to look at the layers. So we've got 3 layers and we've got some structure in there, which is great. I think 20% might be a little high, might go to 10. But that'll be a pretty strong connector either way, so. And what I might do is I also might rotate this 45 degrees to minimize that support structure in there. All right, so just an example, why don't we just do that right now while we're here. I'm not gonna lay it flat there. I'm going to actually reset and rotate this way, rotate this way, oh. Rotate this way. And that way, if I don't have to have support in here, I don't have to like try to break that out. That's the goal anyway. One last slice for good measure. And we'll see what we get. Cool. Maybe. It's got some internal support that's a little weird, like just this little section there, which I don't think is really necessary. Oh, yeah, it might be necessary. That's easy enough to break out. It's a smaller section, so we'll leave that internal support, but that's going to be a lot better. It's going to be easier to break off, so we're going to stick with that. And those are my settings. So I hope this video helped you be able to export some stuff, and I will